In a world of economic uncertainty, there will always be a need for quality tools and people who can use them. That's why becoming a Cornwell tool dealer is one of the best career moves you can make. With routes available all across the nation, it's a great way to be your own boss, supply high-quality tools to professionals, and make some real money. If you're tired of working for someone else, have the drive to succeed, and want a career that can be successful no matter what happens on Wall Street, there's a Cornwell tool truck with your name on the side. You're watching Gearz.
You know, one comment that I hear a lot is that there's just no good project cars left out there. All the good stuff is gone. Well, that's not true. You're just looking for the wrong car in the wrong place. Now, what we have here is a 1967 Mercury Cougar. Spent its whole life in California with the original owner, and she only drove it every once in a while. Yeah, it was actually owned by a little old lady from Pasadena, which would explain the robin egg blue color. But this is all good. This car's been in storage for years. It has almost no rust on it. It's never been hacked on, never been butchered on. This is the kind of project that you want to get, but it gets even better. Due to the fact that this is not a more collectible Cougar like an XR7 or a GTE, or a Mustang, or a Camaro, or a Cuda, well, we picked this thing up for cheap, just a few $1,000s. We drove it in here. It's got factory air conditioning, power steering, power brakes. This thing is loaded. But what we really have is great raw materials at a cheap price to build a vehicle that will absolutely blow those more popular cars away. And that is what we're going to do with it. Okay, the first thing that you need to decide when you're starting a project like a vintage muscle car is what direction are you going to go with it. Now, this is really important because every other decision that you make from here on out stems from what you decide here. So take your time. For example, a car like this could easily be restored back to original condition, and it'd be cool. Or you could do some sort of wild, crazy custom thing with it. I'm sure you can guess which way we're going to go. But no matter what you do, the first thing you got to do is disassemble the car in such a way that you'll be able to get it back together down the road and not lose any parts. Here's some tricks to help you do that. Once you have the hood out of the way, one of the first things I like to do is get under the car. This allows you easy access to drain all the fluids, get rid of the old exhaust system. Wow, gotta love a Sawzall. And then bolt the drivetrain so it can be removed. Now, here are just some of the reasons why it is wise to invest in a project that's got the least amount of rust as possible. Look how solid these frame rails and torque boxes and rockers and floor pans are. Not having to replace these will save you a ton of time and money on a project like this. Okay, when you're disassembling a vehicle, it is very important that you take a lot of pictures before you disassemble the vehicle so you know how it goes back together when you're ready to do that. It's also important that you store and label everything in such a way to where it doesn't just sprout legs and run off. Now remember, any parts off of a vintage vehicle are valuable to somebody. So another good idea is to start a master list of everything you've got. That way you can break it down into what you're going to keep, what's going to go to a swap meet, and what you're going to have to replace. This will help you keep organized and help you lay out your budget. Now, when you are pulling apart a vehicle like this, it's very important that you look the parts over carefully so you know what you got. You almost need to be part detective. For example, this old radiator seemed to be working fine, but if you'll come in here and take a close look at it, you can see there's all kinds of evidence of leaks. So, if you're going to reuse something like this, you're going to have it repaired. However, if you're going to upgrade your cooling system like we are, you're not going to need this. But it's still a good idea to take it down to a swap meet because original restorers and collectors are always interested in something with a factory stamp. Of course, with some parts, it's pretty obvious when they're junk. With everything disconnected, it's time to wrestle the engine and tranny out of its 40-year-old resting place. Hey, welcome back to Gearz. If you're just getting here, you have missed a lot because we have rolled in a 40,000-mile original 67 Mercury Cougar and we're blowing it all apart to build a state-of-the-art street machine out of it. Now, the thing that's different about this sort of project is with a classic car, you don't want to just tear it all apart and throw it in the trash because it's valuable. So, as you can see, we have a pile going together here of stuff we're going to keep and stuff that's going to go to the swap meet. Over there is a pile of total junk. And then, of course, this is the engine and transmission that came out of the car. Now, the reason that I wanted to keep this as original and as untouched as possible is that this is a time capsule, man. This is the best reference that there is for somebody that's restoring an original Mustang or Cougar back to original condition. Notice all the tags are in place. The hoses are original with the part numbers and the Ford Motor Company logo on them. All the California smog equipment is untouched. Even the exhaust manifolds and the Y-pipe are original. Now, if you're going to restore your engine back this way, it's really important that you take a lot of pictures and document where every tag, every hose, every marking is on something like this, because this is what the judges look for at concours-style car shows. Now, if you're not doing this sort of restoration, none of this makes any difference. But before you just throw something like this away, remember that an all-numbers matching drivetrain out of a 67 Cougar with factory air conditioning, smog pump, power steering all in place is valuable to somebody that is doing this sort of restoration. So putting this on eBay or taking it to a swap meet can help you pay for the project that you're doing. Okay, the next area that we're going to dig into on this project is the interior. And the only way to know what you've really got is to take it apart. And trust me, you never know what you're going to find in something like this, especially a car this old. This is great. All right, the first things to come out are the big stuff, like the seats and the console. And as before, this is the perfect time to make a list of the parts that you know you're going to have to replace. What the heck? I have no idea. You tell me. Moment of truth. Oh, man. Yeah. Here we go. This is where all the good stuff is. Under the back seat. There we go. Oh, yeah. Check this out. Come on over here. Look at this. You got a comb. You got a bracelet. You got a fork. You got a bar of soap. You got a business card. We may need to call that number. And you got a coupon for a trial-sized bag of colossal nuts. There you go. All right. Once the seats are out of the way, you better get ready because now it is time to get dirty and nasty. The next thing to come out will be the carpet and the padding underneath it. Once again, don't be surprised what you find here. What's this? It's like got some sort of letter here. Man, wouldn't that be cool if that was from the original owner? Might find out the history of the car. That'd be cool. Now, when you're checking out surface rust on a floor, you need to be real aggressive I'm trying to find out just how bad the damage is, because if you got holes in the floor, you're gonna have to patch it. This is not the time to lie to yourself and pretend you don't have rust. Fortunately, this floor is still really, really solid. Ah, there's one. Got a little hole right there. Little tiny one. It's real solid all the way around it. But we do have one spot right there. We can deal with that. So the verdict is, we really lucked out with this car. I mean, we got a couple of small holes in the floor pans to patch, and that is it. So no major reconstructive surgery. That means the next time you see this car, we're gonna start turning it into the fastest cat on the planet. Now, a lot of people know that the Cougar and the Mustang are very similar. Matter of fact, there's a lot of parts that will interchange. So you might be wondering, yeah, why don't you do the more popular Mustang? Well, the simple answer is the Cougar is cooler. It's much more unique. It has its own racing heritage. And of course, there's a whole world of enthusiasts and parts and websites out there that will support you in building one of these things. So the idea behind the V8 Interceptor is to show you the incredible potential of the Mercury Cougar. Okay, if you're a Ford guy, you know that the biggest issue with a 60s Ford is room in the engine compartment, especially with a Mustang or a Cougar, because they were already small to start with. Then you've got these shock towers that protrude 5 inches on each side into the engine bay. Now, if you're running a small block engine, this is no big deal. But if you're gonna stick a big block in here, or one of the later 4.6 modular engines, you're gonna have all kinds of clearance problems. So for decades, people have been dreaming of some way to get rid of these shock towers. And now finally, 40 years after these cars were built, it's possible to do it. Check it out. This is our new suspension system from Total Cost Involved. Now you may be thinking, Total Cost Involved? Don't they do hot rod stuff? Yeah, they do. That's what I've got under the front and rear of the Rat Roaster. But they don't just do street rod suspensions. They also do performance muscle car suspensions. Take a look at this. You've got a heavy-duty front cross member. You've got motor mounts for pretty much whatever engine you want to use. You have all kinds of bracketry. Then you've got pre-formed boxing plates to strengthen the frame where the cross member is going to go. Then you've got polished stainless steel upper and lower control arms, a power rack and pinion unit, a polished front sway bar. Then, of course, you have dual adjustable coil-over shocks, and then they finish it off with these massive 13-inch Wilwood brakes with drilled and slotted rotors and 6-piston calipers. And, of course, everything is polished. This is a fantastic suspension, but we can't put any of this stuff on till we get that old junk off of there. So it's time to get dirty. For this project, all the front suspension has got to come off. The A-arms, the steering box, the steering column, everything. Also, don't forget, to an original restorer, these parts are valuable. So be sure to set them aside for your next trip to the swap meet. All right, with all the suspension stripped away, it is time to start cutting. But we're not just gonna get rid of these shock towers. No, we're also gonna get rid of these motor mount brackets here, the sway bar bracket there, even these strut rod support channels, everything. So, we're gonna break out the plasma cutter.
And now, Tool Tech.
Some of the main questions that we get about a plasma cutter are, how does it compare to other cutting tools, and do I really need one? Well, take a look at this. A plasma cutter will not only cut heavy steel like this, it'll also cut frames and brackets and angle iron. It'll cut tubing. It'll even cut sheet metal. So it will basically do what all of these other cutting tools will do, but in some cases even better. Take a look. This is a heavy steel frame that was cut with an oxyacetylene torch. Now notice how rough and nasty that cut is. Now here's the same frame that was cut on this side with a plasma cutter. No, notice the difference. Now on this side of the frame, we made that cut with a bandsaw. Now notice that the plasma cutter is almost as precise as the bandsaw, except the plasma cutter's a lot quicker, and thanks to the small size of these new extreme plasma cutters, this will go just about anywhere you want and has the power to cut what you need. When precision and control and accuracy are important in your cuts, that's when a plasma cutter really shines. Trying to make these kind of cuts with a cut-off wheel or a sawzall would be extremely tough. With a plasma cutter, it's like drawing a line on a piece of paper. So, does a plasma cutter replace all of these other cutting tools? No, because there is a time and a place to use every one of these tools. Just like there's a time and a place that you're gonna need a plasma cutter. And fortunately, Miller's got a whole line of them to fit just about any budget, which is a good thing, because once you use one of these things, you are gonna be amazed what you can do with one. All right, the point here was to cut out everything, get down to the bare frame, and basically start over, which is something that Mustang and Cougar owners have been wanting to do for decades. Now, as you can see, with these shock towers gone, you've got all kinds of room in here to stuff in any kind of big block or a modular engine and still have plenty of room to spare. But this project is not just about getting more room into the engine compartment. No, it's also about sticking a state-of-the-art front suspension on this thing so it'll really handle on the street and on the track. Now, as you can see, we have a completely rust-free front end under this thing, which is great. Because if you've got rusty frame rails, you've got to replace those before you can go any further. Now, obviously, we have cut out a lot of metal here and a lot of strength with it. This thing's as flimsy as a potato chip right now. So the first thing we need to do is build some more strength back in here, which means it's time to start putting stuff on. To get the strength back into this frame area, Total Kaase Involved supplies these boxing plates. They just slide onto the frame, and then they're just mocked in place with a bolt through a factory hole. Now, when you go to weld these things on, the idea is not just to weld the boxing plates together. What you want to do is sink the weld deep enough to where it gets into the original frame. And by welding those three pieces together, this is going to be incredibly strong. Once everything is clamped in place, square and secure, weld in the three slots on the plate. This ties the boxing plates to the frame. Next, weld the outside of the boxing plates to the frame. And make sure to keep your weld beads short and move around so you don't build up too much heat and warp the steel. Once the side boxing plates are done, the bottom boxing plate's next, and it goes on the same way. With all your welding done, grab a grinder, smooth everything out, and make it look good. Okay, once all your boxing plates are welded in place and everything's ground down nice and smooth, now you are ready for this massive cross member, because this is what all of this new suspension is going to bolt to. Now, as you can see, Total Kaase Involved has already welded in the mounts for the rack and pinion, the lower control arms, the motor mounts, everything. So all you have to be concerned about is getting this thing in place. Now, it's not that hard. Take a look here. All you do is slide it up against these locating brackets and clamp it in place. Once it's in, spend a few minutes checking your measurements to make sure everything is square and where it's supposed to be. If it's not, now's the time to fix it. Then, when you're happy with the fit, weld it in. The next piece to go on is the upper A-arm shock tower brackets. Now, they come with alignment holes, so you can't get them in wrong. So once you have them in place, clamp them down and weld them up. All right, the final piece to go on are these brackets that hold the front sway bar. Now, as you can see, they've got little ears and tabs to support the sides and the bottom. And they just slide 12 inches in front of the cross member. Then you just clamp it in place and weld them up. Hey, we're back, and deep in the middle of a total revamp of the front suspension on this '67 Mercury Cougar. And the good news is, you can do exactly the same thing with a classic Mustang or a Fairlane. Now, so far, this build-up's been pretty intense. We've cut out a lot of old stuff, welded in a lot of new stuff. And a lot of you are probably wondering just exactly where this thing is going to go. Well, you're about to find out, because now it is time to install this TCI system. And we're going to start with these lower control arms. Now, as you can see, these are not only completely polished, but they've also got the ball joints and the bushings already installed. So all we have to do is bolt these guys in. The coilover shocks are next, and they simply bolt to the shock towers and the lower control arm. Now, like we said before, these are dual adjustable coilovers that will allow you to really dial in the performance of your suspension. The upper control arms also bolt in place using the supplied hardware, and the kit comes with plenty of shims to take care of your alignment. Now, as you may recall, these spindle and brake assemblies come from Total Cost Involved, completely assembled with massive Wilwood brakes. And with a 13-inch rotor and a 6-piston calipers, stopping that car is not going to be a problem. Now, since they're already buttoned up, the bearings are all greased and ready to go, all you have to do is put them on the ball joints and bolt them on. All right, the original steering setup on these cars came through a steering box, which is one of the reasons why these cars wander all over the road, especially as they get older. So, we're changing that. We are putting on a power rack and pinion unit, which is going to give us much better steering, much more precise. Now, at this point, all we have to do is bolt the rack onto the cross member and connect our new tie rod ends to the spindles. Of course, any performance car needs a sway bar to control body lean during hard cornering. And this system comes with a polished sway bar, bushings, brackets, and adjustable end links. And once again, everything just bolts in place. Okay, the final pieces that come with this kit are these flat sheet metal panels, and these are designed to slide right down in here and bolt in place and cover up all this opening, so you got a nice smooth finish inside the engine compartment. And we'll put those on as soon as we finish all this up. Now, as far as your steering column, you don't want to mess around with an old stock steering column, not when there's a company like I Did It out there that has a tilt column that is designed to bolt right in place of your stock column in your old Mustang or Cougar. Now look at this. You've got the piece that goes to the firewall, you got your turn signal levers, you've got your electrical hookups, and they will plug right into a painless wiring harness, which is also designed to plug right into a vintage Ford. So that's a great combination. Now, to connect that steering column to the rack and pinion, I Did It also carries these Borgeson stainless steel U-joints and this double D shaft, so hookups won't be a problem. Now, to finish off our brakes, we also got this Wilwood dual master cylinder and this really unique proportioning valve. Now look at this, it's a proportioning valve, a metering block, even has your brake light switch, all in one nice little package. Now, I know you're wondering, what engine is gonna go in this thing? And you think you know, but you don't. But I'll give you a hint. There's the motor mounts that go with it. And if that's not a big enough clue, well, maybe the crate is. At the peak of the muscle car wars, a lot of people don't realize that the battle wasn't just happening on the street, and it was happening on the racetracks too. Everybody had their big guns out and were blazing away. There were 440s, there were 454s, there were 426s, there were 428s, and everybody was trying to be the big dog. But in this kind of battle, man, you need a shotgun, and nobody had that until 1969. In the late 60s and the early 70s, Ford was out for blood on the street and the NASCAR circuit. Their older big block had served them well, but it was starting to get long in the tooth, and Mopar was wiping their fanny with the brutally fast Hemi. Ford knew that they needed a new engine that would compete. So they secretly developed their own Hemi engine, and they called it the Shotgun Boss 429. Of course, to get the engine past the NASCAR rules so they could go racing with it, they dropped this massive engine into a Mustang and sold them to the public. just like Chrysler did with the Hemi Cudas and Challengers. Then suddenly a problem arose. When NASCAR President Bill France saw that Superbirds were averaging over 200 miles an hour on the big ovals, and Ford and Chevy were preparing to come out with who knows what, he pulled the plug on the big engines and the cars that looked like experimental aircraft and sent everybody scurrying back to the drawing boards with small block engines and restrictor plates. Without the support of NASCAR and other racing venues, the Boss 429 engine was scrapped after 1970, and it disappeared, leaving only a few Mustangs as proof that it ever existed. And now, almost 40 years later, people are still lamenting the loss of that engine and wondering what would have happened if its full potential had been realized. I mean, how would it have done against legendary Mopars and big block Chevelles and Camaros? Well, one guy that decided to quit wondering and do something about it is John Kaase. Well, you've never heard of John Kaase? Well, we need to make a trip. In the small, sleepy town of Winder, Georgia, there sits a building. A simple, unmarked building that gives no hint of what may be lurking inside the doors. No hint, that is, until you step around back and see what appears to be the world's largest set of glass pack mufflers. And of course, the unreal sound that comes from those mufflers is magic to the ears of a gearhead. And it's probably a nightmare if you're a neighbor trying to get some sleep. That's because within the walls of this building is John Kaase Racing Engines. And when it comes to building mega cube engines with insane power, John Kaase is the boss.
We've been pretty much building engines on my own here since '79.
John's career started as a drag racer, but his skill with an engine quickly landed him the job as crew chief for Don Nicholson.
We kind of hung out and pitted next to Nicholson and stuff, and as another deal, he took us under his wing, and you know, eventually we quit racing, I went to work for him.
It wasn't long after that that John decided to open his own shop.
I think that a lot of people think, oh, that guy must be real smart or really sharp or something. Sometimes it's just doing it a lot. I mean, just like in there, we're just dynoing just now. You try something, it doesn't work, you try something else. Well, if you do that for 20 years, pretty soon you have a lot of data stored up. It might not be written down, but it's there. And, you know, that helps a lot.
The thing that sets John Kaase Racing apart from most other shops is they do virtually all the work in-house, from machining blocks and heads to porting and polishing heads and intakes, assembling engines, even designing new products. And everybody that works here not only takes their job very seriously, but they love what they do.
It's the best. Always something going on. It's so good, I pay him on Friday. That's how good it is.
This is a dream job for sure. I've done a lot of different things, but this is by far the best. So, hope to be here forever.
If you've got a $20,000 aluminum block that's been blown all to pieces in your dragster, this is the place to send it to get it fixed so it can live again. Of course, the dyno room is where everything comes to life, and the sound and the power numbers that they get are mind-blowing. This is over 800 cubic inches of pro stock Hemi that's kicking out just under 2,000 horsepower. This is serious.
Actually, you take all these pieces, and when you put them all together and it starts on the dyno, you feel like you accomplished something. It's like bringing something to life.
Yeah.
So it's quite a pretty good rush, really.
However, John's not the sort of guy to just rest on past accomplishments. No, he continues to expand the envelope of high-performance engine building with smaller engines, too. The Engine Masters Engine Challenge is a prime example of that, and where the Boss 429 comes in.
And you can have an engine that makes 2,000 horsepower, but doesn't ever make it down the racetrack. So the Engine Master deal really came in handy for engine builders that wanted to compete without all the other variables.
Because of the Engine Masters, I thought, man, I'd really like to build a Boss 429.
He called me on the phone, and he was thinking about building a Boss 9 the next year. So when he got back, we started looking online for parts and trying to locate these things. We couldn't find any cylinder heads, we couldn't find any of the blocks, and it really became an issue, just the expense of trying to locate and find the parts to build an engine with for the next competition.
I thought, well, maybe we could build new heads, and what would that cost? And
so John went back to the drawing board, and he came out with a cylinder head that'll fit a 460 block, and we went from there and decided to make our own heads. We didn't realize at the time, of course, being gearheads we are, we were going to create this product just for us to build for the Engine Masters. Really what all it could go into, and how it's turned out to be a really wide range of applications.
Now basically what John has done is taken all of his years of building racing engines and used it to start building Boss engine parts that will fit on any 429, 460 block, give you insane power, and is affordable to the average guy. Yeah, the Boss is back.
John went back to the drawing board, and he came out with a cylinder head that'll fit a 460 block.
Of course, the magic in that Boss system is in those heads. And as you can see from the outside, they look just like a super rare vintage set of Boss 429 heads. But to make them fit a standard 460 block and build the power that these Boss heads are capable of, now some changes had to happen on the inside. Check it out. The oiling holes were redesigned to work with the standard block, and the rocker pedestals were also modified for more strength. The combustion chamber was revised to enhance the semi-Hemi design to help give more power and resist detonation. The massive intake and exhaust ports were also reworked to give you even more power. Now you know why they nicknamed this engine the Shotgun. Look at the size of the valves and ports on this thing. Man, they're huge. But that's not all. John also designed his own high-flowing intake manifold to work with the heads and to mount various different types of carburetors and fuel injection. Then, to finish everything off, he also makes his own set of original-style valve covers to give you one of the best-looking engines ever made and the power to match it. Now, I know some of you guys are looking at this and going, oh, yeah, that's great, but what does it cost, $1 zillion bucks? No, man, that's the best part.
No comparison at all. I mean, you're talking a product here that you can buy a 460 block, you can go and buy a $150 junk 460 out of the junkyard. You know, spend $7,000, $8,000 on the top end package, spend a couple grand at the machine shop, and have a Boss 429 engine that produces over 700 horse you can drive on the street.
For around 10 grand?
Yeah, if you want to do it, you know, if you want to build it on your own, you've got a good machine shop, absolutely.
Of course, for those of you that don't want to build the engine yourself, John Kaase also specializes in crate engines built to your specs, all dynoed and ready to go. And that is what's going in the V8 Interceptor. Check it out. This is a 520 cubic inch Boss 9 engine that was dynoed at 750 horsepower and 700 foot-pounds of torque on pump gas. Man, those are race car type numbers. But as you can see, this thing is set up for a street car. It has a complete Billet Specialties accessory system on it that includes all the accessories for power steering, air conditioning, alternator, all wrapped into a nice tight package. A package that should fit really nice in that old Cougar.
In a world of economic uncertainty, there will always be a need for quality tools and people who can use them. That's why becoming a Cornwell tool dealer is one of the best career moves you can make. With routes available all across the nation, it's a great way to be your own boss. Supply high-quality tools to professionals and make some real money. If you're tired of working for someone else, have the drive to succeed, and want a career that can be successful no matter what happens on Wall Street, there's a Cornwell tool truck with your name on the side.
Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where today's big questions are, can we shoehorn this huge boss engine into this unsuspecting Mercury Cougar, and will the 700 foot-pounds of torque twist this thing into a pretzel? Good questions, but first things first, we need to decide how we're going to get all that power to the rear tires, and we're going to do it with a stick. You didn't think we were going to put an automatic behind that, did you? Now, most people are familiar with the T56 6-speed. It's a great transmission, but it had some limitations. So Tremec decided to fix all that and came out with the Magnum 6-speed. And American Powertrain is one of the few places you can go to get one of these and all the other stuff you're going to need to put it in your project.
As far as manual transmissions go, we're probably the foremost experts in the country. We wanted to put together systems so that people could just take it out of the box in their garage, put their transmission in with everything they need, and not have a lot of hassles, not have to run to Napa and beat on the door every day.
The Magnum is not just a 6-speed. It's got much stronger gears inside of it to handle more power. The synchronizers are more accurate, so you can really slam the gears. You have a convertible shifter location, which will help in how you place the shifter up through the floor, and you have the ability to run an electrical or a mechanical speedometer. But the best part is these babies are rated at over 700 foot-pounds, which means this will handle the boss. Now, to go with that transmission, we also got us a flywheel, a heavy-duty bell housing from QuickTime, and an engine plate to protect us if that clutch comes apart. Speaking of clutch, we got one of American Powertrain's dual clutch systems that'll give us incredible holding power and still make it very streetable. To actuate that clutch, we got a hydraulic throwout bearing. To actuate the throwout bearing, we got a Wilwood master cylinder. Then, of course, we have an adjustable cross member and all the hardware, so you have options when you bolt this under the car. Now, the cool thing about using a whole system like this is that American Powertrain's taking all the guesswork out of it for you. Basically, all you do is bolt it together. The motor plate goes on first, followed by the pilot bushing and the flywheel. The dual disc clutch is next, and it comes as a complete assembly with the clutch discs and pressure plate all assembled and ready to go. So all you have to do is bolt it on. Followed by the bell housing. Now, this hydraulic throwout bearing is really slick. Take a look at this. You see, you got a threaded insert here that allows you to perfectly set the gap between the throwout bearing and the pressure plate. And it does away with all of that old mechanical linkage that always drove you crazy. Now, of course, it just slides onto the transmission input shaft, and you just run the lines out the hole at the bottom. Now, at this point, you're ready to bolt the transmission to the engine, which means it's finally time to fit that engine into the car, see what kind of room we got. Okay, go ahead and start lowering it down. You'll need to push the back that way just a hair. There we go. Looks good. Looks good. Clear. Okay, push it forward just a hair. There we go. Come on down. It's like putting Dumbo in a box of Cracker Jacks. Man, it doesn't matter what you're into, you've got to love this. Now, obviously, we just have it mocked into place right now, checking clearances, and I'd love to tell you that everything's just dropping in place perfectly. But that's not realistic on a project like this. Man, anytime you combine a unique suspension, engine, and car, you need to be prepared to solve some problems. Now, as you can see, we've got all kinds of room down the sides here with the shock towers gone. But here in the back, we got a little bit of an issue where the air conditioning is. So we might have to modify that a little bit to clear the engine. Also, underneath, we got just a little bit of a clearance issue on the oil pans, keeping the engine from dropping down. But other than that, man, it's looking good. Now, I know some of you guys have been a little concerned when I mentioned 750 horsepower in a unibody car, and you're right. 750 horsepower in any unibody car, shock towers or not, is going to cause a problem. So to build some strength into the front of the car, I'm going to build a tube frame that's going to go from the firewall underneath here. It's going to run underneath this inner fender, come out through this panel, and then go down to the front of the frame and to the rear of the frame and triangulate that together. Then I'll fabricate a removable strut that will go to the firewall, triangulating everything together, giving us incredible strength and removing all of the flex out of the cowl area. Now, it's important to remember when you're doing a project like this, to take the time to overbuild it so you can enjoy it, not build it weak and cheap to where it's going to be breaking on you all the time. All right. At this point, we're ready to bolt in the transmission and the shifter. Now, the shifter on this project is pretty unique. We've got a low car handle, and then for the knob, we went to our buddies at Speed Dog and had them sink our logo deep into the middle of one of these marble-looking knobs. I mean, this thing begs to be slammed around. And if you want one of these for your project, you can get them right on the website. As you can see, the V8 Interceptor is well on its way to getting some serious teeth. And hopefully this gets you to thinking about maybe sticking a Boss 9 into your project. That way you can find out firsthand how well that engine would have done against the other legendary big blocks of the muscle car era. You know, if you pick up just about any automotive magazine these days, you're going to find that muscle cars are hot. But people aren't just restoring them back original like they used to. No. These days, a lot of people want to upgrade them so they'll perform and handle like a modern car, but they'll still keep the look and the cool factor of that vintage sheet metal. A prime example of this kind of project is the V8 Interceptor we've got going here. Now, this started out as a '67 Mercury Cougar. First thing we did was cut out the shock towers, stick in a state-of-the-art front suspension. Then we stuffed in 520 cubic inches of big block Ford and a 6-speed Tremec transmission. And in the rear end, we've done absolutely nothing, which means the minute we uncork that Big Boss engine, we're gonna blow this stock rear end completely down the road. Fortunately, there's a simple solution to this problem, and all you muscle car guys are gonna be interested in this. Check it out. This is the new torque arm rear suspension system from Total Cost Involved, and it is designed to greatly improve every aspect of your rear suspension. Now, it starts with these subframe connectors made out of heavy gauge steel that ties the subframes together. Then you've got this X-style cross member that also goes to the subframes and triangulates it all together for incredible strength. Then you've got this really heavy-duty torque arm that controls the rear end and plants those rear tires to the pavement. Then you have link bars, you've got all kinds of bracketry. You've got sway bar, pannered bar, dual adjustable coilover shocks, and all kinds of hardware to bolt this thing in. So the first thing you need to do on this kind of project is get all that old junk out of the way. With that done, the first thing to go in are the subframe support brackets in the leaf spring pockets. The subframe connectors then mount to the brackets in the rear and then slide over the frame rails in front where they're bolted to the body and supported inside with reinforcing plates. Now, since most frame rails are buggered up a little bit, be prepared to use a little persuasion to make them fit.
There it goes.
The big cross member is next, and as you can see, it bolts in at the subframes front and rear to tie everything together and eliminate that body flex that's normally associated with the unibody car. Okay, the rear sway bar, the pannered bar, and the rear cross member all mount back in this area here. And these two brackets are what make it possible. So once again, all you have to do is slide them onto the frame, drill your holes, and bolt them on. We'll finish up by bolting the sway bar to the rear cross member. And then bolting the rear cross member in place. Now, at this point, we are ready for a rear end. Now, obviously, we need something seriously strong to match that massive engine. So we hooked up with our buddies at Curry Enterprises, had them put together a 9-inch Ford for us. Let's take a look at it. They started with their super strong F9 fabricated housing that's strong enough to handle massive amounts of abuse. Then Curry loaded it with a nodular iron center chunk that's packing 389 gears and a true track posi. Of course, sending the power to the wheels are heavy-duty forged 31 spline axles. To help pull this thing to a stop, we got big Wilwood disc brakes that feature a 13-inch rotor with an internal parking brake, and then these big 4-piston calipers. Then, to finish it off, Curry shipped the axle to Total Cost Involved, where they welded on all of these special brackets to make it fit their system. And this is how it all goes together. The torque arm simply bolts to the bottom of the housing. Then the pinion support rods bolt to the top of the housing and down into the torque arm. Now, these rods are not only incredibly strong, but they're also adjustable, so you can easily adjust your pinion angle when you need to. With the axle jacked into place, install the coilover shocks. And the link bars into the brackets on the housing. Then finish it up by bolting on the panhard bar and connecting the sway bar end links to the axle. Now, at this point, all the modifications that we've done to this vehicle have been custom hot rod stuff, which is great, but eventually on a project like this, you are going to need parts that are specific to the vehicle. And fortunately, the Cougar shares a lot of parts with the Mustang. So we made a call to Mustangs Unlimited to get some stuff for this project. Check it out. Now, to keep that big engine cool, we got this heavy-duty aluminum radiator that's designed for a big block that's running air conditioning, like we're going to be. Now, as you can see, all the inlets and outlets and all the bungs are welded in place, and it's designed to bolt right in place of your stock radiator, so that's cool. Now, for fans, it comes with these dual electric fans and the shroud that mount right in place for a nice clean look, and it's low profile enough to where it will clear even that Boss engine. Now, for the interior, we got a replica of the 67-68 Shelby console and this wood grain Lucara steering wheel to kind of finish off that sports car look. Now, for hood pins, we got these press and twist style that went on the 68 California Special, and for hood hinges, we got these really cool billet aluminum hinges. That's about the coolest thing you can put under the hood of your Ford. Now, for seats, we got these Pro Car Rally seats that actually have the look of the original interior, but they're fully adjustable, have an adjustable headrest, and they have side bolsters to keep you from sliding out of the seat when you're doing some hard cornering. Now, to hold you in the seat, we also got these Corbeau 5-point harnesses. The best part is, though, all of this stuff will bolt right in your Mustang or Cougar with very little modification. Unfortunately, there's a lot of parts on a Cougar that are unique to the Cougar. So if you're going to restore one of these things, you got to know where to find this stuff. So the question is, where? The answer? West Coast Classic Cougars. Let's go. You're going to love this. West Coast Classic Cougars was founded in 1989 by Cougar enthusiast Don Rush. The main purpose? To keep these unique cars on the road.
I get to live vicariously through my customers. I get guys that call me every payday, and I walk through them over the phone or in person. What should I do here? And I got a little piece of me in every one.
Located in Salem, Oregon, where rust-free cars are still driving around, They not only specialize in new and reproduction Cougar parts, but they also carry quality used and NOS parts for the Cougar that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Valve covers. These were used on the XR7G. What's cool is when you call us, you're talking to an enthusiast. You're not just talking to somebody who got the job a few months ago that's going by what the book and the computer. This is a Cougar hardcore guy.
As you can see, they've got just about everything you're going to need to bring your Cougar back to life. They've got carpet sets, they've got all kinds of interior and exterior trim, they've got stereo systems, they've got every piece of weather stripping, every door handle, they've got consoles, they've got seat upholstery, and look at this. Sheet metal, floor pans, pedals, wings, spoilers. They've even got that hard-to-find stuff like re-chromed bumpers and padded dashes.
If you're diving into a Cougar, you better be in it for the love, because there's a lot more going on there. There's a lot of parts there. It's a harder car to do with that grille and the taillights and this, that, and the other.
But what really makes West Coast Classic Cougar different is if they've got a huge salvage yard full of cars, which means they have a supply of hard-to-find used parts like headlights and taillights and vent wings and sheet metal. And since most Cougar exterior sheet metal is not being reproduced, this becomes a very important source of body parts.
That's the way it's supposed to fit. Just right.
They also have a restoration service where they will restore the parts before they send them to you. So when you get them, all you have to do is bolt them on the car. And as you can see, there's quite a difference between a restored piece and one that came off of a 40-year-old car. And their restoration services are absolutely top-notch.
Unlike a Mustang or a Camaro where everything's new, you're stuck with restoring original stuff. Like these grills, nobody's gonna reproduce that grill anytime soon. That trim, even if we did reproduce it, it'd be expensive and it never fits like OEM. So, if we wanna make a Cougar a viable project for the average guy, we gotta offer everything.
So, with all of the parts and support that are available for the Cougar, there's really no reason not to pick one of these things up as a project, because they're not only cool, they have unlimited potential. And we're gonna prove that to you with the V8 Interceptor. For the longest time, one of the slickest modifications that you could do to a car or truck was to shave the door handles and smooth everything down. The problem is, on a muscle car, shaved door handles don't look that good, because on these cars, the door handle was actually designed to accentuate the style of the car and give you some polish here. So, the next thing that people did was pirate late model door handles because they were a little more flush. The problem with that, though, is that those door handles don't look so good on a muscle car. They're the wrong size, they're a little too small, and they're just not a shape that people liked. So, at this point, people started to think, is it even possible to combine two classic looks, two classic tastes together, and create something that's totally unique? Well, the good news is it is possible. They did it with this, and now we're gonna do it with cars, and you're gonna love it.
My chocolate is in my peanut butter. It's doggone good.
Solution comes in these very cool flush mount door handles from Dave Kindig at Kindig Design. Now, if you'll compare these to an original door handle, notice that they're roughly the same shape and the same size. So you're gonna retain that classic look down the side of the car. But when you look down from the front, these guys are gonna pretty much disappear. So you're gonna have that smooth look that you're after too. The best of both worlds here. Now, I know some of you guys are looking at this going, that's cool, but how do you open it? Very simple, take a look. All you do is push here to unlatch it and pull there to open the door. Now, of course, you have to weld these new door handles in. And I know some of you guys are going, oh no way am I gonna cut into my classic door, I'll mess it up. No, you won't. This is something that you can do, and we are gonna prove that to you. Okay, the first thing you need to do is strip the door. Which means the door panels and handles need to come out. as well as the windows and the window tracks. Now this is also a good time to clean things up and check for rust, because you don't want to do this modification on a rusty door that needs to be reskinned or replaced. Now we'll take a template of the new door handle and we'll set it in place on the door. Now remember, this is a universal kit, so don't expect this just to drop in place and be perfect. You have got to make it fit. Now on the Cougar, the back of the door here is right up against the back of the opening, which means we're going to have to slide this door handle forward enough to where that pivot point clears, which means it's going to open up possibly a little hole there and another gap that we'll have to fill later on, but that's no problem. Now, you're going to want to spend some time here positioning it just right. Hey, somebody dropped this?
Yeah, I think the dog licked it.
Because you want the handle to sit level and not be crooked. Taking measurements will not only help you make sure it's square, but it also makes it easy to duplicate the handle position on the other side of the car. Now, once the marks are made for your cut, you need to sit back, take a deep breath, and make sure that this is actually something that you want to do. Because at this point, it's still possible to chicken out, forget about the whole thing. But what's the fun in that? So, once you decide this is what you want to do, just cut out the metal. And an air saw or a jigsaw is the best tool to do this. The key to welding sheet metal is to go slow and move around using a series of spot welds that you slowly join together until they form a single long seam. Now I'm using a MIG welder because it's quicker and better at filling gaps that might come up, but a TIG will work too. And if you take your time, you shouldn't have any warpage issues no matter which one you use. Next, we'll make the little patch panel to fill the rest of the original hole. Now remember, the more time you spend here making it fit right, the better the finished product is going to be. When the welding's done, take a grinder and dress down the welds until you have a smooth transition all the way to the opening. When you're finished grinding, very little body filler should be necessary to make this perfect. Finally, reassemble the door handles. Okay, the big question is, was it worth it? Did we actually make the car better and more unique? Or did we just screw up a classic? Well, if you'll take an original door handle, put it up there against what we just did, you'll see we got the same basic vibe going on here. This is much more unique, much more modern. Then when you look at it from the top, you can see just how nice and flush this actually fits into the body. Then check this out. Just pull the door open. Man, is that cool or what? This is one of those modifications that people will look at and they will try to figure out what you did, and that's what you want. And now you get to do the other side. Now, with all those accessories hanging off the front of the engine, fitting a radiator that's big enough to cool that engine could be an issue. We took care of that problem with this big aluminum radiator and dual electric fan system from Mustangs Unlimited. Now notice, it's going to slide right in place of the original radiator and fan and leave us plenty of room to service those accessories. However, we will need to come in here and cut these edges and make our own mounting brackets. Next up is the master cylinder. Now remember, we were going to use this Wilwood dual master cylinder, but with a mock-up engine in place, you can see we've got some issues here. With the master in the stock location, you can see we're right up against the valve cover. But a simple way to solve this is just remount the master cylinder about an inch to the driver's side, and that'll give us just enough room to get the valve cover off and still get to the clutch master cylinder. Now, if you don't want to do it this way, don't want the master coming this far into the engine bay, Wilwood also makes a whole bunch of smaller master cylinders and pedals to go with them, so you can mount something in the stock location and still have plenty of room. But if you do it this way, remember, these are single master cylinders, so you got to mount 2 of them, one for the front brakes, one for the rear brakes. And to do that, you're going to have to modify the firewall in this area so you can mount 2 side by side. Now, speaking of the firewall, as you can see, we've got plenty of room here for the block and for the bell housing. Not so right here. There is not enough room to service that bell housing. So this part of the firewall is going to have to be recessed at least as far back as this is. With the engine out, you can see that fortunately there is a simple solution here. All you have to do is cut around this stamped area, get rid of it, build yourself a flat panel and weld it in. This will recess this area by 2 inches, giving you plenty of room to service that engine. But remember, if you do this, you're probably not going to be able to reuse your stock air conditioning and heater. You're going to have to get a smaller aftermarket unit because now you have less room under the dash. The steering rack needed only slight modification for oil pan clearance. This tab here needed to be ground down a bit. The oil pan you need to use is from Moroso, and it's designed to fit a Ford 460 engine into a Fox-bodied Mustang. Due to its unique sump design, it fits right around the steering rack and crossmember with just a few inches to spare. Okay, with so much going on at the front of the car, there is one thing that we have to deal with back here, the gas tank. Now, you can reuse the original gas tank for a restoration if it's not rusty and there's not a bunch of junk in it. But if you're going to use a modern engine with modern fuel injection, electric fuel pump, you're going to end up modifying a tank like this so much it's not worth it. So we made a call to Rick's Hot Rod Shop and we had him make us a custom tank. Now, Rick specializes in direct replacement tanks and custom tanks. So here's what we had him do for the V8 Interceptor. All 304 stainless steel, sending unit, hookups for the electric fuel pump. And then inside, you got that big old Aeromotive fuel pump that'll support up to 2,000 horsepower. And then of course it's got all the baffling that you're gonna need to run a road course, a drag strip, or just down the street. The best part is, this will drop right in place of the stock Cougar tank or a Mustang tank. Now, like we said before, anytime you stuff that much engine into a small engine compartment, you're going to have some clearance issues. And we've been able to address most of those on the show. But one thing we haven't talked about is hood clearance. Now, as you can see, even with just a carburetor on it, we're already above the hood line. So you're going to have to cut a hole in the hood and at least put a scoop on there. But we're not going to run a carburetor, and we're not going to put on a scoop. Not on something this wild. Check it out. Now everybody knows that one of the coolest things to have sticking up out of your hood is a blower.
When do we go for a ride?
But even that would pale in comparison to the visual punch of an 8-stack injection sticking up through the hood. But that'd be impossible, right? I mean, for that engine, that kind of intake system doesn't exist. But man, what if it did? This is the incredible 8-stack electronic fuel injection that John Kaase has developed for the Boss 9 engine. And one thing is for sure, you better be ready for some attention if you're going to put one of these on your engine.
There was nothing to fit this engine, so we had to get a hold of some people and have us make a pattern. And you know, we did a prototype manifold, and then we had the pattern built for this manifold, and then we had the manifolds cast, and then we had to figure out how to machine them and stuff.
Of course, the system is based off of a vintage-style Hilborn 8-stack fuel injection to give it a nostalgic visual punch. But if you look a little deeper, you're going to find this is a state-of-the-art electronic fuel injection. The fuel rails, the injectors, and the wiring harness are all tucked up nice and neat into the middle of the unit to keep a super clean appearance. The whole bottom, however, is a plenum that connects all the ports to give you a common, reliable vacuum so you can run power brakes and sensors and all the other stuff necessary on a modern street car.
You know, with the electronics, you get all the idle perfect. Your fuel is perfect everywhere. You know, if you got some cylinders, even though they're all individual, you know, some cylinders run a little leaner than others or something, you can tailor all that.
Of course, everything is controlled by a computer by Fast Electronics to give you the looks of a race car and the reliability of a street machine. But what about power?
I was scared to death when we first ran it because you spend a lot of money getting to this point.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, well, what, you know, these engines normally make about 750 or 80 horse or whatever with a hydraulic cam. I think, well, what if we put the thing on there? It's 500 horse. You know, what then? You know, we've got a lot of money, and it could have done that, but it wasn't. It was almost exactly the same as a carburetor. High RPM, you know, like 760 or 80 horse. But, you know, the cool thing is it's 20 or 30 foot-pounds more torque.
The best part is, this isn't just some one-off unit that we've got and you can't have. No, if you want one of these induction systems to top off your Boss 9, all you got to do is give Kaase a call. And if you need something that's a little more understated, you can get stacks in different sizes all the way down to these little stubbies, so you can try to fit something like this under the hood. Obviously, we're not going to try to do that. Now, another thing that an engine like this needs is headers. You gotta have them, but they've got to fit the tight confines of that engine compartment. So where do you go? Over here. When you've got a Ford engine like this, you need somebody that specializes in Ford headers, and that place is Ford Powertrain Applications, or FPA for short. Now, when they heard that Kaase was coming out with the Boss 9 engine, they knew they had to make a special header for it. Check it out. They came out with this long tube, tri-Y style design to give the power and performance of a long tube header, but being a tri-Y, it's not going to take up quite as much room. Now, as you can see, they've got big, thick flanges, so they're not going to warp on you. And you've got the ball style collector, so you don't have to use a gasket, it's not going to leak on you. That cool gray color comes from Performance Coatings, and it's called Restoration Gray Ice. And not only does it look cool, but it's also an extreme high temperature coating, so that is not going to be burning off anytime soon. Now, I know some of you guys are looking at this going, there is no way that long tube header is going on that engine in that engine compartment around that big transmission. Want to bet? As you can see, they're designed to tuck nice and tight around the block and give you plenty of room for steering and everything else. If you're looking for some Ford headers that'll perform and fit, check them out at FordPowertrain.com. You know, one question that you're going to get a lot when you're building a car or a truck is, what is it going to look like when it's done? And sometimes it's fun to keep people guessing. Other times, you need to be able to show people what it is that you're creating so they can share your vision and your ideas. This is especially important if you want to be a professional car builder. That is where having a rendering comes in. Now, since drawing a vehicle in all the proper proportions with all your modifications and all your changes is not something that most people can do, that's where guys like Keith Coucher comes in, because Keith Coucher is one of the best illustrators in the business. Check it out. When he was growing up, Keith was a typical kid in that when he got bored in school, he drew cool mechanical stuff to pass the time.
When my parents moved out of the house that I really grew up in, they found my old grammar book, for writing first grade, I think first or second grade. And there was about 3 pages of writing, this entire book of about 30 pages, and the rest was all little car drawings I had done. Some really kind of goofy. I had like little inventions, things shooting ray guns and stuff like that. So there was something in it that fascinated me about, the lines of a car and how do you manipulate them.
However, it soon became evident that Keith's level of talent was beyond what the average kid was doing.
I had a surplus of model parts, so I kind of knew that I could take this bumper, and put it on this car and it would look better, and I could see it in my head how it would look, and I would do that. And my models end up looking a lot better than most of the other kids. There was about 5 kids in my block that we were kind of all modelers. We got together and modeled at different people's houses.
But just having artistic talent is not enough in the world of automotive design. You really need to be a gearhead too, and Keith was. And he continued to hone his skills both in the classroom and in the real world on his own projects. Of course, eventually, all of that hard work and perseverance finally paid off. And if you've ever picked up an automotive magazine, you've probably seen a design from Coucher Customs.
This is the new one. Are you showing this or no?
What's that?
He's filming. Can we show this or? I'm a little
nervous.
Yeah,
we'll just.
Okay.
We don't want to see this?
Well,
this is a secret?
Yeah, I kind of think we should keep this one under wraps. I'm just not far enough along with it to let.
We won't let anybody see this.
Okay. The website is couchercustoms.com. That's with a K. And if you call me, my phone number off the website, I can give you my direct email. And that's generally how I work. I have you send me photographs of the car. You know, I don't do artwork. What I'm selling you is a blueprint. I'm selling you an insurance policy.
Yeah.
This policy right here, basically, you just happen to be able to look at it. You don't have to read any verbiage. It's right here. And all we're trying to do is make the builder understand what you want, and I am the translator. You know, you're speaking Spanish. He speaks English. I'm translating.
Now, as you can see, the V8 Interceptor is well on its way to looking more and more like the picture and more like a real V8 Interceptor. I mean, look at that. That is awesome. You stand too close to this when you hit the throttle, it's just gonna suck you down inside there. It's so cool. Now, there are a few things that I'm gonna do to this car that I didn't tell Keith about, so they're not on the rendering, because we don't want to spoil all the surprises. There's no doubt that hot rodding 60s style muscle cars is popular. Big engines, modern suspensions, upgraded interiors. These are all things that guys are doing to these cars. And one body modification that really makes a difference is shaving off the drip rails. Because first of all, you don't really need them. Second of all, it's a thing stylistically on these cars that's kind of left over from the 20s or 30s. So, we're gonna show you how to shave those suckers off of there and smooth down the look of the car. Cutting the rail off is fairly straightforward, and a cutoff wheel or a sawzall will make quick work of it. Wow. Follow that up by dressing down the edge with a grinder. Now, even though that looks good, you're not done yet. No, because a drip rail is where two pieces of metal come together. You have a top piece and a bottom piece, and even though you can't see it, there's a seam line right there that needs to be welded back together. Now, you can do this with a MIG welder, but the ideal tool is a TIG welder because you don't have any gap to fill, and that TIG will give you great penetration along that seam line. As with all sheet metal welding, keep the weld short and move around to prevent warping the metal. Once the welding is done, just smooth them out with a grinder. Now, hopefully some of you guys are looking at this going, man, what a simple, easy deal. And it is, especially on this car. Now, some cars it's a little more involved, but the same techniques apply. And what a difference it makes. Wow. Now, when you do this, you need to make sure that you're not overlooking something, because that brings up this. Protecting yourself when you're welding is very important, and companies like Miller have a whole line of products to help you do that. Gloves, jackets, helmets, these are all obvious things to help protect you. But what you may not realize is that there could be some serious dangers lurking on your project that you don't even know about. For example, this is the typical roof seam where the roof and the A-pillar come together. A seam is covered with a soft metal called lead. Now, if you get in there with a welder or a grinder, you run the risk of breathing in lead dust or lead fumes. Neither one is good for you. Now, the lead is not hard to find. As you can see, it actually looks different, and it even sounds different. Now, when you find lead, does that mean that you can't work on the car anymore? No, you just need to make sure that you're wearing a proper paint respirator or fresh air helmet to protect your lungs. If you'd like to learn more tips that make your life easier and safer in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. You know, a while back, we started a project called the V8 Interceptor, where we took a mild-mannered 67 Mercury Cougar that was lady-owned all of its life and began to transform it into a wild street machine that somebody like Mad Max would want to drive. The entire front suspension was cut out. And a high-performance suspension from Total Cost Involved was installed to not only make the car handle better, but also make some room for some serious horsepower. The rear got the same treatment, with link suspension, big brakes, and a built 9-inch Ford rear end. Finally, a massive 780 horsepower Boss 9 engine was shoehorned into place. Stop. How you on the motor mount? I'm right on mine. Along with a Tremec 6-speed transmission. From there, it was time for paint and bodywork. And obviously, we want the paint to be as unique as the rest of the car. So we hooked up with Doug LaRue at the Hot Rod Institute to see if he and the students wanted to take a crack at it. They did. So I quickly outlined with Doug what I wanted them to do. Build it right into the rocker panel, and then you do a nice slash cut here to where it exited right here by the tire. You could probably work it in with that fender flare a little bit. However you want to skin the roof. You know, I don't know if you want to come into the quarters, do that and just take the skin, use the inner structure on this one. You got a lot of options.
Yeah, we'll probably go ahead and cut the skin off and see what our inner structure looks like. And if it's rusty in there, then we'll just replace the whole thing.
Fender flares. You've already got a natural flare happening here. I've never really liked the fact that the Cougar's bent back this direction anyway. It's always hard to get a fat tire into there without rubbing. So, if you could come out probably another couple inches and drop to where you're about there. But what I'm thinking, if you can take some like 2-inch tubing, you know, run it behind this cowl, you know, and weld it in there, weld it into the cowl there, and then bring a piece out here. It just drops right down, goes to the frame. See, there it is on factory holes. You're so close. If you just come over and make the major hole that one, you're clear. And if you come over just a hair further, I actually would have room to put a little booster in there. Then we loaded it up and sent it to South Dakota for the work to begin. Now, you might be wondering what the difference is between the Hot Rod Institute and all the other tech schools out there. The biggest difference is in the attention to detail that they teach the students. They want to build craftsmen here, not just people that know how to put a car together and get it out the door. Chassis, suspension, drivetrain, interior, it's all covered at the Hot Rod Institute.
We look for students that know what direction they want to go into. If they want to go into working on older cars, rebuilding a muscle car, building a hot rod from scratch, building a motorcycle from scratch, and they want those real hands-on type skills, that's the type of student we're looking for.
Getting your hands dirty right from the start is what I think is the coolest part about this school, and it's literally whatever you can think up here, they'll help you figure out a way to build it and build it right and build it safe.
We grade on classroom testing, which it's good to know it in theory. But when it comes to the shop, it's what they get done and what they get done correctly. If they work at something and it's not right, well then you can't hardly get credit for it. It's just like the real world. You don't get paid unless you do it right.
With the students helping wherever they could, Doug, his son Danny, and the instructors dove into the Cougar body and the long list I gave them to get it ready for paint. The whole roof was replaced, as well as any rust in the quarters or the floor. A cage was constructed to support the cowl and to tie into the frame rails. Then it was all hidden behind a smooth firewall. The side exhaust system exits over the top of the frame rails by running under the seat pedestals. The rockers were cut away, and the side pipes sunk into the rockers to literally make them part of the car. The hood was cut to allow the 8-stack injection to poke through, and the stacks on the ejection were cut down to match the rake of the car. And with the body getting closer to paint each day, the Cougar has made a great training tool to teach the students the high level of workmanship that's going to be expected of them once they graduate.
We're training our guys to go to work in some of the top shops in the nation.
And this industry is always looking for craftsmen who have a high standard of excellence and a great work ethic.
You know, I want to build awesome cars, but more I want to respect what's come before me and be a craftsman and a tradesman and do it how they used to do it, because to me it's a dying art, it's a dying breed, and without people like this at this school, you know, it's going to disappear in the next couple of years.
A successful automotive project takes planning and organization, but instead of using an old tablet or notebook, there's the Gearz Deluxe Project Planning Book. This was designed to help you lay out a project, the parts, the tools, costs, and keep it organized with colored tabs, a pouch for receipts, and even a place to attach photos. If you decide to sell the vehicle, it serves as a complete history of what's been done. If you have a project or plan on starting one, the Gearz Project Planning Book is the best way to lay it out and make it happen.
Welcome back to Gearz and the return of the V8 Interceptor. Now obviously the car is back and it's got a coat of paint on it, but there's two big questions I know that most of you have. Number one, what exactly did we do to this thing? It's been gone a long time. And number two, did the Hot Rod Institute hit that very difficult criteria that I laid out for them? Well, we can answer both those questions at the same time as we look this thing over. The first thing that grabs you is the vinyl top is long gone and a replacement roof was fit on the car to get rid of the rusty spots. The rear fenders were flared almost 2 inches to fit bigger tires. And the work matches the original body line so well that it's hard to notice that anything was done. The rear modifications are just as subtle. For example, this wing. You probably think this is off a Cougar Eliminator. It's off a '69 Trans Am, and the ends were fit and tucked to fit these quarter panels perfectly. Also, we got rid of the lock in the center. We now have a remote latch to open the trunk. And then we took a RideTech gas cap, centered it between the tail lights, and then took the license plate, which is normally here, relocated it underneath. Now, the bumper wasn't just modified in the center, it was also smoothed down, and the ends were tucked up against the body. So this thing, once it's re-chromed, will be absolutely incredible. The holes for the backup lights were opened up, and that's where our exhaust tips will come out. Of course, the hood and the engine compartment were modified extensively as well. Holes were cut for the injector stacks to stick through, and recessed California Special twist-on hood pins were grafted on to hold the hood down. But the thing that really grabs your attention is the deep, glossy black paint that was all done with PPG materials from primer to clear coat.
We like black. It doesn't scare us a bit. We don't mind welding across the roof or a quarter panel. We have the skills and the knowledge to get it straight.
And as you can see, from every angle, it lays perfectly flat, thanks to a lot of great bodywork and lots of wet sanding and buffing.
Some of the problem with the black is we use a powder coat when we're color sanding, so we can see where we leveled all the texture in the clear. You can't use that on black. So you kind of got to sand it out, wipe it down, get it dried off until you know you got everything. You only get your 1,000 grit scratches out, 1,500 grit scratches out, then all the texture to go with it.
The only accent is a subtle silver stripe running down the side, just enough to break everything up and accentuate the body line. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Both the instructors and the students at the Hot Rod Institute did themselves proud on this one.
I actually really have enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot, Doug and Danny and I, and got to spend hours in here together, joking and laughing and, you know, making stuff cool, doing the stuff that made us want to be instructors in the first place.
I can't even explain how happy I am just to be a part of it, having the chance to work on it. It was awesome.
Bring insight to the Hot Rod Institute of what we do and what we're capable of doing and what our students are capable of doing. If it gets one of our students a job someday, it'd be fantastic. If it recruits a guy out there wanting to get into the hot rod industry and he points him in the right direction to go to a school that may help him out a lot, fantastic. That's exactly what we're looking for. So.
But if you think the car looks good now, you wait till we start assembling that thing. Now, we're going to start that process with these taillight assemblies that we got from West Coast Classic Cougars. Now, since everything on these is either new or restored, it's just a matter of bolting these on. All right, what about the headlight assemblies? Well, even though these are completely restored, they're not quite ready to go in the car yet. Because one of the coolest things about a Mercury Cougar were the hidden headlights. One of the most frustrating things about a Mercury Cougar, the hidden headlights. Because they were vacuum operated, and you had tanks and vacuum canisters and lines going all over the place to try to make these things work. And once they got a little old, this is what you got, the old sleepy-eyed look. Or the headlight doors would over-rotate and mess up the line of the grille. Almost every Cougar I've ever seen has an over-rotated headlight door. It looks terrible. But what do? Well, West Coast Classic Cougars has got a solution with this electric conversion kit for the Cougar headlights. Now this utilizes a modern electric headlight motor and puts it in place of the old vacuum canister. And as you can see, it fits perfectly. So now when you hit the switch, both headlights come up. When you turn it off, both headlights go down. And there's no over-rotation of the headlight door ever. If you've got a Cougar, you've got to have this kit. Unless, of course, that's a look that you're after. Hey, you're watching Gearz and the reassembly and the final fitment of the V8 Interceptor. Now, as you can see, the headlights are already in place. Now the next thing we're going to put on is the front bumper. Now, just like the rear bumper, this front bumper's had some modifications done to it. The license plate dent that was here has been cut out and replaced with new metal to get rid of that. And the rest of the bumper has been narrowed and tucked so it's going to fit right up against the body really nice. Now, to get that fitment, we're going to have to modify these mounting brackets too, so we have adjustment to get that nice tight fit. What we're looking for is about a 1/4 inch gap between the body and the bumper. Now, once we get this thing all fitting how we want it, we'll take it to advanced plating and have them rechrome it. Okay, the last thing to go on the front is the lower valence. And that's just a matter of putting on the new turn signal lights and then bolting the valence in place. Now, we did do a little bit of modification here. Check this out. We got rid of the license plate dent here in the center, filled that in with new metal so it'll match the front bumper. Now, I know some of you guys are wondering if we're going to run a chin spoiler. Not going to do it on this car. We've done so much smoothing and tweaking, this car is going to be a lot cleaner without it. Okay, we've got the face back on the car. Now it's time to put the heart and soul in it, which means that big Boss 9 engine has got to be prepped to go in here. Come on. Now obviously, this engine looks a little different than when you saw it last. It's been painted a gold pearl color to offset all that black paint. Advanced plating chromed the valve covers in the intake. And John Kaase stuck in a different cam. So now the engine has been dynoed at over 830 horsepower and right at 750 foot-pounds of torque. That's crazy. Now, I know you guys are ready to see this engine go in the car, but we're not quite ready to do that yet. The next thing we're going to do is install some of these ARP header studs into the heads. Now, I know some of you guys are thinking, oh man, you don't need to do that. It's just a waste of money. And that brings up this. One of the best ways to mess up threads in aluminum parts like heads and intakes is to keep threading a steel bolt down into them all the time. When you factor in the different expansion rates of the metal when they get hot, and the fact that most people overcrank the bolts, well, it's no wonder that most aluminum parts have stripped threads. Now, the best way to keep this from happening is to install studs like this. A stud will allow you to install a nut over and over and over again, and all the wear and tear stays on the steel threads of the stud and not down into the aluminum. Also, using studs makes it really easy to install parts like carburetors, headers, that kind of thing. So if you've spent money on your aluminum parts or you found that perfect vintage part at a swap meet, the best way to make sure that the threads last is to use studs on them. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. Okay, the next thing to go on is this low-car flexible dipstick to clear the headers. And it just threads into the oil pan and attaches to one of the header studs. Finally, we'll install the motor mounts and we'll test fit the headers to make sure we don't have any clearance issues. Now, both the headers and the motor mounts were sent off to NitroPlate to get their high temperature ceramic coating. Not just because it looks good, but because it's one of the toughest coatings on the planet, which means we know this isn't going to chip or flake or burn off. Hey, we're back, and just about to stuff this huge engine into this 67 Mercury Cougar. But before we do that, I want to show you some of the subtle modifications that the Hot Rod Institute did under the hood. Take a look. A cage was run through the inner fenders, across the cowl, and down into the torque boxes to keep the front of the car from flexing. The brake and clutch master cylinders were relocated to the side of the car a couple of inches to clear the valve covers. The firewall was recessed a couple of inches and smoothed, and the grills up here on the cowl were completely removed to smooth out the lines of the car. All this stuff adds up to make a very clean engine compartment that has plenty of room for that big boss engine.
Here she goes.
Now, one thing that might be grabbing your attention here, other than this huge engine and these stacks that are sticking a foot out of the hood, are these billet aluminum hinges that we got from Eddie Motorsports. Now, these are a direct bolt-in for Mustangs, they've got them for Camaros, and they look a whole lot better than that original hinge, and they work better too. This is one of those small things that really makes a huge difference in a project. And Eddie Motorsports has got all kinds of accessories to really add some punch to your project. Now, a lot of you guys have been wondering, what are we going to do about air cleaners? Well, these stacks come with these little filters that go right on top of the stacks and keep dirt and trash from getting in and keep people from tossing coins into the stacks at car shows. Okay, we got the drivetrain in place, the hood's back on, and one look at those stacks and those holes in the hood, and you know exactly what's about to happen here. And that's what makes this car so unique. This is not a silent sleeper. This is an in-your-face hot rod. And just like Mad Max couldn't hide the blower under the hood of his Interceptor,
He's the last of the V8. Tell him about the blower. 600 horsepower. With the blower. The blower, man.
we can't hide the stacks under the hood of the V8 Interceptor. The last thing we'll put on today are these shorty side pipes that fit in these pockets on the side of the car. Now these will be connected to electric cutouts from Doug's headers. So with the flip of a switch, we can bypass the mufflers and run straight out the side pipes. And there it is, the V8 Interceptor. A far cry from what we started with, and a few steps closer to being finished.
Can't get enough gears? Make sure to check out the Tales of a Gearhead podcast, where Stacey brings a lifetime of automotive knowledge, friendships, and expertise to the listener. Also, check out our social media channels for updates and videos of Gearz projects, as well as special contests, giveaways, and events. If you have a vehicle you want to enter into What Are You Working On, go to staceydavid.com and submit it. There's also the online store and tons of other Gearhead information that will encourage you to get out there, build something, and go drive it.
Hey, welcome back to Gearz. You know, a few weeks ago, we rolled the V8 Interceptor back into the shop to not only show off the fantastic paint job that the Hot Rod Institute did, but also to start putting it back together. Now at this point, I've got bumpers away at chrome, I've got other parts away at powder coating, so it's the perfect time to focus on the interior. And we get a lot of questions about interior projects. So we're going to show you a bunch of things that you can do in here to help make your project a success, starting with tips on doors and floors. Obviously, the first thing that you want to do when you're putting a car back together is get some protection down on the floor before you put your sound deadening in. And there's a lot of products out there like this chassis saver paint that you can paint right over rust, right over bare metal, and it'll seal everything up and keep rust from happening. But one area that most professional restorers, amateur restorers, even the factory overlook are inside the doors. Take a look inside that door. That is bare steel in there. That is a breeding ground for rust. So while you have everything apart, take your rust inhibited paint, put a nice coating inside on the bottom of the door, and in a couple of years, you will be so glad you did. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. Okay, with our floors taken care of, we are ready to lay in this carpet that we got from West Coast Classic Cougars. Now, as you probably know, automotive carpet is pretty much form-fitted to your floor pans. So, putting something like this in is a matter of dropping it in place, trimming your edges, and cutting your access holes. However, if you'll notice, these are formed with heat in a press, so they may not be 100% accurate. But if you'll take a heat gun, warm up this plastic when you're doing your final fit, you'll be able to contour and fit that right to your floor pan. Now, in the past, when you were restoring a muscle car interior, you basically had two choices. You could take it back original, like this, or you could do something full-on custom. The problem is there was no in-between, and a lot of guys today want to reuse their original seats and customize them. Fortunately, there's a way to do that. Come on. TMI is a company that specializes in custom do-it-yourself interiors for classic Ford, Chevy, and Volkswagen vehicles. Now, starting with the idea that your original seats were good, they just needed to be upgraded, TMI developed special seat cushions to fit right on your original frames. Now look at this. They've got more pronounced side bolsters on the bottom and the top, just like a modern performance seat. Then, of course, they developed upholstery to go over those foams, and they'll do them in an original pattern, or they'll do a full-on custom stitch for you. Now, when you put this onto your original seat, this is what you end up with. A full-on custom seat bolts right in place because it's your original seat, and you've got all kinds of options here. You can do low back, you can do headrest, you can do custom upholstery, whatever color you want. All you got to do is tell them and they'll stitch them up for you so you can get the custom look that you're after. TMI also supplied matching upholstery for the rear seat, the door panels, and the rear side panels, so the look of the front seats flows all the way through the interior. And once again, since these are your original panels, it's just a matter of fitting them in place on the car. All right, another issue can be the headliner, because a lot of restorers don't want to use an original style headliner. Fortunately, you got an option. TMI has a one-piece fiberglass headliner for a lot of vehicles. It screws right in place of the original headliner, and then it's just covered with whatever upholstery you want. They also have A-pillars and B-pillars to finish off the installation. Now, obviously, for the V8 Interceptor, we're sticking with the original style headliner. But now, at least you know you got options. Hey, we're back and laying out the interior of the V8 Interceptor. Now, as you can see, the rear seat and panels are in place. Now I'm just finishing up the door panels and the console. Now, this console is a really slick piece from TMI. It's a fiberglass console that's designed to fit right into a classic muscle car. As you can see, it goes under the dash, got your shifter spot, a couple of cup holders, an armrest, and even a place to keep your speeding tickets, which on this car is gonna fill up pretty quick. Now, the door panel is the last major panel that we have to finish up. Now, as you can see, I'm reusing the original style armrests and interior lights because those are cool. But instead of using the original style window cranks and door handles, we got these really cool billet handles from Clayton Machine Works. Now, these are designed to fit right in place of and operate just like the original handles, but with a much more contemporary look that really fits what we're doing to the car. Now, I know some of you guys are looking at these manual windows and going, man, how hard would it be to put power windows in a project like this? Well, it's actually pretty simple, as long as you have a kit from New Relics, because they specialize in bolt-in power window systems for classic cars and trucks. Take a look at this. These are your main window units. These are your quarter window units. And notice that the electric motors are already attached. All the steel is heavy gauge, just like the originals. You got hardened bearings and teeth, so these are going to last a long time. Then you've got a wiring harness that goes with it, and all the switches that you're going to need. Notice these switches are round. They'll go right in place of the hole that's in your door panel, so you don't even have to mess with your door panel. The best part is the New Relic stuff is American made. They have these for over 300 models of cars and trucks, and it comes with a lifetime warranty. So if you want to put power windows in your vehicle, these are the guys to talk to, and you have another option. You know, if you watch Gearz a lot, you know that we usually do a custom guitar to go with the big projects. And the V8 Interceptor is no exception. But this time, instead of starting with something new and turning it into something really cool, we decided it would be more fitting to start with something that needed to be restored, like the car. And a few years ago, Nashville was hit with a huge flood that destroyed entire neighborhoods. The guitar we started with was pulled from the water and written off as ruined. It started out as a very expensive Paul Reed Smith custom, but water damage had ruined the finish, warped the neck, and destroyed all the hardware and electronics. So we hooked up with master craftsman Jonathan McClanahan at McClanahan Exotic Woodworking, and he started to bring the old beast back to life.
I build instruments from just raw billets of wood, whether it be electric guitars from mahogany to curly maple to mandolins, guitars. Get the raw billet of wood and just start carving away. It doesn't matter what kind of repair needs to be done, what's wrong with the guitar, how it's been busted out necks, rims, cracks, anything, I can fix it.
A guitar like this is not a lost cause.
Oh, absolutely not. That's one thing I love, and that's one thing I specialize in, is bringing them back.
Due to water damage, the waist was cut in 1/4 inch on all sides. The top was recurved and arched. The back scallop was extended and widened, and 1/4 inch was shaved off of the neck. For a finish, Jonathan threw on an incredible 3-tone sunburst and added acorn nuts for knobs and a 33 Ford grill emblem to tie it into the car. Paul Reed Smith supplied all new hardware and pickups, so the thing sounds like a Paul Reed Smith should. Which means it'll handle everything from classic jazz, blues, country, or rock. Now, there's no doubt that the guitar is cool, and we're going to tie it in with the car with what we're going to do on the dash. Now, everybody knows that having a wood grain dash is pretty cool. And a lot of these older cars like this, especially the Cougar, came with a fake wood grain dash. But we are not into fake wood. So, as cool as that is, we're going to go a different route. So, I took an old dash here, and I made a template out of 1/4 inch aluminum, cut to fit the classic gauges I'm going to use on all the lights. And then I took another panel, cut it to fit other gauges and my air conditioning vents. Now, I could have polished all this out and it would have looked good, but it's not wood. So we sent this off to Jonathan.
To look at a dash like this, I mean, this isn't cardboard, it isn't particle board, it isn't plywood. This is curly maple, and it's sugar maple. And I mean, to be able to put a piece of curly maple out there and sand it down and get it to the way that I do, that whenever you move it, you just move it, and you can watch the wood do what I call flashing.
And what we got back was a custom wooden dash insert. But not only that, he also redid the wood in the Kaase steering wheel so that it all matches. That's right. The wood grain and the sunburst in the dash and the steering wheel matches the guitar perfectly. That's why it's called McClanahan Exotic Woodworking. The best part is, you send him a template, tell him what you want, he'll build it for you. And once all the parts are set in place, you get a pretty good idea of what this interior is going to look like. Wow. You know, one thing that is almost always overlooked when people get into building custom vehicles is the fact that the little detail work a lot of times is more difficult and time-consuming than the big stuff. For example, stuffing another engine into a vehicle, that's pretty straightforward. But getting that engine all hooked up and working right, that's where all your time's gonna go. And that's why we get a ton of questions of people saying, what parts do I buy to do this? How do I make them all work together? And how do I modify them if I have to? Those are good questions. Because if you change the parameter of the vehicle at all, which is what we do, well, you can rest assured that those parts are probably not going to bolt right in. And the burden falls on you to make it all work. So that's what we're going to show you how to do today. Okay, first things first. If you're trying to do a major project and you don't have a way to keep it organized with something like our planning book, you are asking for trouble, because there is no way you're going to remember all the parts and part numbers of everything you're putting on. I know you think you will, but you won't. So get that established first, because you're going to reference back to that a lot throughout the project. Now, just like the old song says, the parts of a car are also all connected. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is the steering column. Now, it doesn't matter if you're doing a Ford, Chevy, Dodge, or some crazy hot rod creation. These issues are going to come up. Now, all three of these columns come from I Did It, and all of them could be made to fit this car, but there's only one that's the right choice. So let's take a look at them. The first one is a factory replacement for the '67 Mustang. Now notice it has Ford-style wiring, and it's got the area up here for the original Ford-style steering wheel. So if you don't know what kind of wiring you're using or what steering wheel, you can't get a steering column yet. Now, we are not going to use Ford wiring, and we're not using that original wheel. So this one's out. The second column is also a factory replacement for the Mustang, except it has Chevrolet-style wiring and the GM top, so it will fit our aftermarket steering wheel. The only problem with this column is we've modified our steering box. We got rid of it, we put on rack and pinion. So this column is now too long. I need something shorter than stock length, so this one's out. The third one is the universal street rod column. You can get it in the length you need, and as you can see, it's got the Chevrolet wiring and the Chevrolet top, so it will fit the aftermarket wheel. This will be the column that'll fit that car. Now, once you have the column decided, then you can get all of your adapters and your hangers so you can mount it properly. Since we've already mentioned wiring, we might as well just jump into that bundle of snakes right now. Now, just like the steering columns, you can see I've got a whole bunch of wiring harnesses laid out here. All of them come from Painless, and any one of them could be made to fit this project, but you're going to find that there's always one that works the best. You just need to find it. So let's take a look here. The first is a factory replacement harness. Now, this has the right color-coded wiring, the right hookups, everything that you need to just plug it in place of your original harness. If you're doing an original restoration, this is the harness to go. That's not what we're doing, so this one's out. The next one is what they call the Pro Series. Now this is for somebody that's building a Pro Touring car, which is what this is. So as you can see, it's got a full fuse block, and it's got everything you're gonna need to run whatever alternator, whatever setup, the grounding, everything you're gonna do. So this is a really nice setup for you hot rod guys. Now similar to that is the Classic Plus customizable muscle car harness. Now as you can see, it's got a full fuse block as well, except this one comes through the firewall and has a plug that plugs in the front wiring under the hood, very similar to an OEM deal. So if that's more what you're looking for, this is the harness to go. Now of these two, this is the best fit for what we're doing here, but we got a problem. We've added in-dash air conditioning, a center console, we have roll bars coming down under the cowl, and I have 4-speed pedals. I don't have a lot of room under the dash for any of this kind of stuff. So we need to look at the remote mount customizable harness. As you can see, it's got the full fuse block, but it also has extra long wires going to each of the sections, so you can mount this fuse block in the trunk, in the console, wherever you want to put it. And that's the kind of deal we're going to have to do on this car. Air conditioning is another big question mark for a lot of people, because companies like Vintage Air, they make direct fit units and they make numerous universal units. And it's up to you to figure out which one's going to work. For example, on the V8 Interceptor, we started with a factory replacement unit because we want to be able to reuse our stock controls. And Vintage Air has a system that will allow you to do this. The problem is, remember, we smoothed the firewall and we recessed it a couple of inches. So there's no way that's just going to bolt in place. Here's how we solved the problem. First, we made a simple bracket that bolts to the firewall and will support the front of the air conditioning unit. Then, to support the rear of the unit, the upper bracket was reshaped and a spacer fabricated to mount it to the stock bracket under the cowl. Now obviously, all of this nice pre-bent tubing that came with the kit, we can't use any of it because we don't want our plumbing to come out through the firewall. That's why we smoothed it down in the first place. And what we do want it to do is come out here and then run down this inner fender so it's all nice and hidden when the car goes back together, which means we need to plumb this thing by hand, and that involves making our own lines and using a bulkhead fitting to come through the firewall. Now, I know this seems like a lot of work, and it is, but that's the kind of project this car is. Everything's custom, everything's smooth, everything's hidden. But what about those projects out there that aren't quite as labor intensive as this? How do you solve these kind of problems on those? Well, let's take a look. Okay, what we have here is an 81 Camaro and an 86 Chevy truck. And both are going to get new steering columns, but for different reasons. The Camaro gets one because we're swapping from an automatic to a stick. The truck's going to get one because we've swapped in a newer automatic transmission with more gears, so we need a different shift column. Now obviously both vehicles are going to get new wiring harnesses, but the truck is going to get an original direct fit style wiring harness because that's the sort of buildup this is. The Camaro is going to get a muscle car Pro Touring style of harness because that's the sort of project this is with the LS swap. Now obviously both vehicles came with factory air, but we junked that, pulled it off, and we're going to replace them with direct fit Vintage Air units because we're not modifying the firewall or under the dash. So you can see it's pretty important to know how you're going to build a vehicle before you start buying parts. Now, for those of you that are building that crazy stuff like old tractors and off-road vehicles and military vehicles and rat rods and that kind of thing, that's what this Snowcat project is for. Because this didn't have a steering column, it didn't have air conditioning, heck, it barely had a wiring harness. So for this, we just need a universal wiring harness. We'll wire this thing up, we'll be good to go. As a lot of you may know, 2017 was a landmark year in the automotive world because it marked the 50th anniversary of some really iconic cars, like the Camaro and Firebird. But of all the cars released in 1967, only one was destined to become Motor Trend's Car of the Year, and that did not go to the Camaro or the Firebird. That honor went to the Mercury Cougar, and it was a big deal. Here's why. When Ford launched the Mustang in 1964, they literally caught the rest of the automotive world with their pants down. Nobody had ever seen anything like it, with its unique sporty shape, huge option list, and affordable price tag. And for 3 years, the pony ran unbridled as other manufacturers scrambled to come up with something to compete with the potent combination.
Cougar!
1967 was the year that all those new cars hit the market. And when the smoke cleared, the Mercury Cougar sat on top of the heap.
Cougar is your man.
Like its cousin, the Mustang, it shared the long nose, short deck design, but the designers at Mercury decided to go after a more upscale market. So a slightly longer wheelbase was used for more leg room inside, and a more plush interior with air conditioning and automatic was how most of the cars were ordered. The styling was cutting edge for the time, with hidden headlights and a unique electric shaver grille and matching taillights. And these set the tone for the billet aluminum look that would come 30 years later. The Cougar was also a serious performer when ordered with the big block, and it was a common sight ripping up racetracks, drag strips, and city streets all across the nation. Now, most people realize that when you build a car or truck from the ground up, you're going to be assembling it and disassembling it over and over again while you're fabricating and fitting parts. Then, when you're getting ready to put it together for the last time, that's a completely different process, because all of those ball joints and those bushings have to be greased and tightened down properly. The cotter pins need to be installed. The brake calipers need to be installed and gapped and clearanced so everything's working right, because everything needs to be put together because you're getting ready to drive this thing. Also, you need to do a preliminary alignment. The steering rack is next. And to get it to fit around that Boss 9 oil pan, I had to grind off some tabs here and reroute this line. Then, to get it to look as good as the rest of the suspension, painted it up and polished the ends. Now it's ready to go in the car for the last time. So now we'll just bolt it in and set a preliminary toe in so we can safely drive the car until we can get it down to an alignment shop. Okay, one question that I hear a lot is, where do you find brake parts for a custom build like this that's loaded with aftermarket brakes? Because you generally can't find hoses and fittings for these kind of brakes at your local auto parts store. Fortunately, there's a place called Pure Choice Motorsports that specializes in putting together a plumbing system for aftermarket brakes. All you do is tell them what kind of brakes you're using, what kind of master cylinder you're using, and they'll put the system together. Now check this out. This is for AN fittings, so obviously it's got a lot of stainless steel lines, and then the fittings come in individual packages with little notes to you telling you exactly where each piece goes. You've got T-fittings, you've got banjo fittings, you've got the hoses, you've got bulkheads, all those weird fittings that you can't find, they've got them. They even include stainless steel clamps to hold the lines in place. So, no more running downtown looking for that one piece that you forgot to order. Now you just put it in. As you can see, we send our rear end housing, the cross members, the torque arm, the sway bars, down to Mr. Speed to have them lay on a coat of splatter brass powder coating for a cool look and great durability. Now it's just a matter of reassembling everything. So once we slide those big 31 spline forged axles in place, We'll reassemble the wheel with brake assemblies. And torque them down to spec. The next step is to plumb these rear brakes. Now, even though this Curry housing comes with all these TCI brackets welded in place, there's nothing on here for brake lines. So, this nice smooth housing, this becomes your playground to plumb your rear brakes. Now, the first thing you need to decide is where your feed line is coming in from your car. And on most vehicles, it's over here on the driver's side. So, we fabricated this little tab, taking into consideration where the sway bar is and where our shocks are going to mount. And we're going to mount our T-fitting right here. Next, we'll fabricate a couple of simple tabs to hold our line clamps on each end. And finally, bend and flare our brake lines and put them in place. We'll follow that with the Mr. Gasket vent filter. And the rear end is ready to go in, but we're not putting it in yet. Because the next step is the Big X cross member that crisscrosses the bottom of the car to give it strength and rigidity. And since everything has already been pre-fit, a few taps with the mallet is all it takes to get it to slide in place.
In a world of economic uncertainty, there will always be a need for quality tools and people who can use them. That's why becoming a Cornwell tool dealer is one of the best career moves you can make. With routes available all across the nation, it's a great way to be your own boss. Supply high-quality tools to professionals and make some real money. If you're tired of working for someone else, have the drive to succeed, and want a career that can be successful no matter what happens on Wall Street, there's a Cornwell tool truck with your name on the side.
Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where we are walking you through some of the challenges that you're going to face when you're doing final assembly on your project. Now, the reason I say challenges is because cars don't necessarily go together in a nice, neat, linear fashion. No, sometimes the proper steps seem to jump around a good bit and don't make any sense until you step back and see the big picture. And that's what we're trying to get you to do. Take your time and see the big picture when you're building your vehicle. That way you don't get frustrated and start throwing things into the wall. Now, so far we have our front suspension installed, we have our cross member in place, and we just put together that rear end. So it would stand the reason that the next step is to install the rear end, right? No, there's a lot you still need to map out under here before you get a rear end in place, and the link bars and the torque arm and all that goes with that. The first thing that we're going to do is the rear brake lines. And with the cross member in place, we can lay out the path that the hard line is going to take to get safely to the rear of the car. Then we'll just go ahead and plumb it. Okay, the next thing we're going to map out is the fuel system and the fuel lines. Now, we already have an electric pump in the tank, so we're good there. But we're going to add to that this Holley fuel pressure regulator and filter. And then we're going to plumb everything with these Earl's Speedflex hoses and all the fittings. Now, to plumb all of this system, come on, check this out. As you can see, the fuel ins and outs are right here in the center of the tank, and if the rear end is going to be in this area, then it stands to reason to run the fuel lines down this way and up here and then down the frame rail. But before you do that, Where's your exhaust system going to go? On this car, it's going to run down the center, up over the axle here somewhere, and then out through the back of the car. So you can't really lay out your fuel lines until you mock your exhaust system in. And that brings up a whole nother set of issues. Come on. Now, as you can see, the exhaust system we got going in this car is extremely unique. We got the main exhaust running down the center, and then we have dual electric cutouts that bypass the exhaust and send it straight out the side pipes when we want to be especially loud. Now, obviously, this system takes up a lot of real estate under the car, so you need to plumb your fuel system accordingly. Obviously, you don't want it anywhere around the exhaust. Also, another thing, these cutouts are electric, so you need to be planning now how you're going to get power to those and still avoid the exhaust. But wait, there's more. Come on. As you can see, the obvious path for the fuel line is completely blocked by the tailpipe. So, it looks like we're going to need to bring the fuel lines up here over the center, over the rear end, to this area here, make a 90-degree turn there, make another 90-degree turn here, and come down the frame rail. And right here is a perfect place to mount that fuel filter. Since we're on the subject, what about the wiring that's going to the rear of the car? Are you going to run it inside the car or up underneath? You need to decide that now and start mapping it out. Also, what about your battery? Is it going to be at the front of the car or in the rear? You need to decide that now. Now on this project, obviously we're putting the battery in the trunk. So among everything else, I'm laying out how I'm going to run my power line from the trunk to the front of the car and miss the rear end and the huge exhaust system we're putting in here. This should give you an idea of how this stuff all meshes together, and it has to be done in a certain order. Don't make the mistake of getting in a hurry and putting in your big stuff like your engine and your rear end first, because if you do, you just got to take it out and redo it. And that is just a waste of time, and nobody has time to waste. You know, one question that I get a lot on final assembly is how do you keep track of what you've installed and tightened down and what still needs to be done? Because if you forget to tighten something, man, that could be catastrophic. So a neat trick is to do exactly what the factories do. Take a marker in whatever color you choose and put a mark on every nut and bolt that you've already tightened down. That way you can tell at a glance what's been tightened and what hasn't. If it's got the mark, it's done. No mark, you still need to tighten it. This is especially important when you're dealing with sub-assemblies like this that you may have done months or even years ago, and you're trying to remember exactly where you left off. If you can find those marks, it'll bring you up to speed like that. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. Well, it all started when I rolled in a 1967 Mercury Cougar. Now, the old car had been well used, but having lived most of its life in California, it was pretty solid for its age. So we drove it in the shop and began tearing it apart. The original interior was all there, but definitely needed upgrading. So the old seats and the carpet were removed, revealing a lot of old history along the way. Oh, yeah. Check this out. Come on over here. Look at this. You got a comb. You got a bracelet. You got a fork. You got a bar of soap. You got a business card. We may need to call that number. And you got a coupon for a trial-sized bag of colossal nuts. There you go. It also revealed that the floors had a few typical rust holes. This floor is still really, really solid. Ah, there's one. Got a little hole right there. But the rockers and the rest of the sheet metal were actually in pretty good shape. The original engine and transmission were still running with around 70,000 original miles on the clock. But with only 289 cubic inches and a 2-barrel carb and an automatic transmission, yeah, this was nowhere near enough power for what I had in mind. So those were removed and set aside. The old worn-out suspension was also pulled out and set aside. At this point, things got serious, and we pulled out the plasma cutter and sliced out the shock towers to make room for a TCI suspension complete with disc brakes and coilover shocks, so we could make this thing handle like a modern performance car. The rear end was also upgraded to match the front with a TCI torque arm suspension and a new Curry 9-inch rear end, also packed with disc brakes and coilovers.
Well, you see, that proves he was building the car to break the law.
No, it's
Disc
legal.
brakes?
Yeah.
Coilover shocks?
Well, that's
race car stuff.
No,
that's
that's
what
street
that
legal
is.
stuff.
Street legal. Don't plead ignorance with me. How low is the car?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It's low.
All you race car guys like it low to the ground. How low can you go?
No, but it's street legal. It's legal stuff.
Don't give me that nonsense. Not in my streets, it's not. Well, don't plead ignorance to me. How low is that car?
With the shock towers out of the way and the suspension laid out, it was time for the engine. And for something called the V8 Interceptor, the motor had to be unique and powerful and big. So,
how you on the motor mount? I'm right on line.
We dropped in 850 horsepower in the form of a 520 cubic inch John Kaase Boss 9 engine, topped with an 8-stack injection. Then we backed it up with a Magnum 6-speed transmission.
John Kaase. John Kaase builds race car engines. That's what you've got in your vehicle, a race car engine, don't you?
No,
don't you?
He does
Don't
build.
you? Don't you?
He does build racing engines, but the Boss 9 is a street engine. I mean, okay, it's 850 horsepower, but it's running on pump gas.
You can't get 850 horsepower on pump gas. That's impossible.
No, Kaase can.
Well, I don't care if it's Santa Claus. You just can't do it.
It's John Kaase.
I really don't like this John Kaase.
From there, it was time to dig into the body and do some modifications. So the drip rail was shaved and custom door handles installed. Then we sent the car and a list of things to do to the guys at the Hot Rod Institute, where the students
Hot Rod Institute rocks!
Is that good? Under the watchful eyes of the instructors, reworked the floor pans and the bumpers and smoothed out the bodywork per my instructions. Once that was done, the car was ready for paint. And they laid on an ultra deep black paint job with a special silver accent stripe that tells you everything you need to know about the purpose of this car.
Yeah, I see what happened there. You painted the car black.
Well, yeah, black is a
Well,
great
you know
color.
who paints cars blacks, don't you?
No.
Speeders, speed racers, hot rodders, race car drivers.
No, black is a really popular
Now, I pull
color. It's a
over more-
popular color.
I pull over more black cars than any other car on the road because speeders drive them. You know how many chartreuse cars I pulled over last week?
I don't know.
0.
Okay, at this point, it was time to start putting the car back together. So the freshly painted and powder-coated suspension was bolted in place. And the huge motor and transmission were bolted in for the last time and wired up and plumbed.
Here she goes.
Now, another unique feature was the exhaust system that we created with the guys at Stainless Works. It features a custom set of mid-length headers that flow into a cutoff valve under the floor. Now, when the valve is closed, the exhaust flows through the mufflers and out the back of the car through special ports in the valence panel that used to hold backup lights, giving the car a nice rumbly tone for driving around town. However, when the valve is opened, the exhaust is diverted away from the mufflers and through the special side pipes that are tucked deep into the rocker panels for a clean, low-profile look.
Well, there it is right there. There's the problem, Stacey.
What, the pipes?
The sound.
The sound of the pipes.
Well, the whole Kit and caboodle right there. You got your pipes, you got your sound coming out of the pipes. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, you can turn the pipes off. See, that's the cool thing.
But you don't. You hot rodders coming right down the boulevard. Here I am. Look at me in my big old car making big old noise.
Wow. Hey, welcome back to Gearz and the long-anticipated test drive of the V8 Interceptor 67 Cougar. A test drive that was going extremely well, except for one particular law enforcement official that really seemed to have it in for us.
Okay, so when we left off, you had the car painted, mostly back together.
Yep.
Except for the interior. Was that next on the list?
That was next on the list.
It better be. That thing looked like a rat trap.
Special TMI seats and console were done in a buckskin, vinyl, and suede, and they were exactly what we needed to make the interior pop against that black paint. To add elegance, both the dash and the steering wheel were covered in real curly maple wood to match the Paul Reed Smith V8 guitar that was built to go with the car. Of course, custom gauges, a tilt steering column, and air conditioning bring modern comforts into a classic 60s interior. Now, to make sure the trunk is presentable as well, a TMI trunk kit was fit to hide the battery and the fuel tank and leave us a small but usable cargo space. Of course, the rolling stock had to be just as unique as the rest of the car, so shot wheels were loaded with Goodyear's supercar rubber, and we were ready to take this thing out and put it through the paces.
And that's where the problem starts.
But I haven't done anything yet.
Well, you started the car.
But that's not illegal.
Well, but see, you start the car, then you're going to get it on the road and open the pipes, and that's a slippery slope, Stacey.
Well, if I just, you gotta start the car. You can't build it and not start it.
You gotta nip it. You gotta dial it back. You gotta nip it in the bud. You start, you nip. Start, nip.
So you're saying that I should build a car and not start it?
Well, sure. I got books on my shelf I don't read. Still looks good on the shelf.
The first thing to test is the suspension. And keep in mind that the TCI suspension is designed to run road courses, so we knew we had the capability to handle well, even with the big engine. And we weren't disappointed. With a little bit of adjustment on the shocks, we'll be able to dial in the suspension so it will handle as well as virtually any performance car on the road today, and be a lot of fun on a racetrack or a road course if we want to do that. With the suspension dialed in, the big question now is, what is that big Kaase engine capable of? Well, with 850 horsepower and 750 foot-pounds, it will obviously boil the tires whenever you feel like it. But out on the highway, it will rumble along in traffic with no lurching or overheating and give no indication of the incredible power that's on tap. Well, that is, unless you look at those big stacks sticking out of the hood, the wing on the back, and the huge rear tires and the side pipes. It's kind of hard not to see those. However, when you start to lay into the gas, the big motor roars to life, and with 6 gears to choose from, you'll quickly find yourself on the far side of the speed limit with a lot more room to go. The only limiting factor here is just how big of a speeding ticket do you want? Now, the exhaust system is something that we've talked about a lot. And having exhaust cutouts is some of the most fun that you can have at a stoplight. The sound of the Boss 9 through unmuffled pipes is just magic and idle. And it's absolutely bombastic when you open the throttle.
This is Bernard, Checkpoint Chickie. Come back.
This is dispatch. Go ahead, Bernard.
Keep your eyes out for an interceptor. I've got somebody tearing up these back roads. Keep an eye out for a black car, tan interior. Well, so this is funny to you, huh? This is a real hoot.
This is great. Seriously, you were out in the trees?
Well, we don't have no porta potties out there when you're fighting crime.
Are you sure you don't want to shut this off?
I got nothing to be ashamed of. Sometimes you drink coffee, you gotta let it. You ever drain the fluids here at the shop?
Not like that, I haven't. Of course, the look and the stance of the car with its hot rod rake and black paint make it stand out like a ballistic missile to the other vehicles on the road. And the fact that it's a Mercury Cougar make people take a double and triple take, trying to figure out what it was that just blew past them. And there you have it, the V8 Interceptor. Hopefully this gives you an idea what it takes to build a vehicle like this. And
Well, I knew I'd finally catch you. Took me weeks. I've been on county roads, highways, side streets, main streets. Look at this thing. Oh, it's a real rebel, I tell you what. You got more pipes than Jeff Glulley at a skating rink. Look at this. Black car. I'm going to get you for a black car with brown interior. You got your pipes wide open, speeding, evading arrest. Oh, I'm going to throw the book at you, buddy. The whole book. Well. I'm afraid in lieu of charges, there's really only one thing we can do.
What?
Yeah, read it and weep there, Hot Rod.